Hey, and welcome to another live broadcast of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we're going to continue reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me put a couple links on Facebook so people know. Of course, if you've subscribed, you probably got a notification. I plan on, like I talked with some devotees, scheduling broadcasting. So probably start off do Mondays at 6:30 and Wednesdays at 6:30, and we'll have a book that we regularly read from, and then all this random kind of like whenever I'm inspired or we have time, this random reading that'll still go on. It'll probably just be from the Bhagavatam, not just from the Bhagavatam, but it'll be from Bhagavatam. And then right now we're doing Bhakti Aloka. There's already first part is already up, so if you want to watch that, really good information in this book about spiritual life. The other thing I want to do is start having discussions with everyone who's on the stream after the stream. So there's a program called Discord that we're going to try to use. It's a free online basically video or audio chat room that everyone can get in and talk at the same time, and we can discuss what we read. So if anyone watching these videos is interested in joining that chat, afterwards send me a message in Facebook, and I can tell you how to get on Discord. It's a pretty cool program. Basically you just need a microphone and some headphones. Better to have that than speakers, because speakers start to feedback. You got to set up a profile and account, and that's pretty much it. It works really good. It's a pretty cool program, and it's free. Hey, can't beat that. So let's start with the stream. Well, let's start reading. And we are starting in Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 19. Swayambhuva Manu is still talking to Dhruva Maharaj about pacifying him. He's pacifying him so he doesn't continue his war with the Yakshas. Translation. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, but in the form of time. He is the killer of everything. He has no beginning, although he is the beginning of everything. Nor is he ever exhaustible, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. We read this last time, I think, but that's okay. The living entities are created through the agency of the Father and killed through the agency of death, but he is perpetually free of birth and death. Purport. The supreme authority or inconceivable power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be minutely studied from this verse. He is always unlimited. That means that he has no creation or end. He is, however, death in the form of time, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, I am death. I take away everything at the end of life. Eternal time, unquote. Eternal time is also without beginning, but it is the creator of all creatures. The example is given of touchstone, which creates many valuable stones and jewels, but does not decrease in power. Touchstone is a stone you touch it to iron and it turns it to gold. It's a kind of a stone of legend. So, similarly, creation occurs many times. Everything is maintained, and after a time, everything is annihilated. But the original Creator, the Supreme Lord, remains untouched and undiminished in power. The secondary creation is made by Brahma, but Brahma is created by the Supreme Godhead. Lord Shiva annihilates the whole creation, but at the end he is also annihilated by Vishnu. Lord Vishnu remains. In the Vedic hymns it is stated that in the beginning there is only Vishnu, and that he alone remains at the end. An example can help us to understand the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. In the recent history of warfare, the Supreme Personality of Godhead created a Hitler, and before that a Napoleon Bonaparte, and they each killed many living entities in war, but in the end Bonaparte and Hitler were also killed. People are still very much interested in writing and reading books about Hitler and Bonaparte and how they killed so many people in war. Year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement, but no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They are interested only in who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. So we talked about that verse last week. So text number 20. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his feature of eternal time, is present in the material world and is neutral towards everyone. No one is his ally, and no one is his enemy. Within the jurisdiction of the time element, everyone enjoys or suffers the result of his own karma, or fruit of activities. As when the wind blows, small particles of dust fly in the air, so, according to one's particular karma, one suffers or enjoys material life. Purport. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original cause of all causes, he is not responsible for anyone's material sufferings or enjoyment. There is no such partiality on the part of the Supreme Lord. The less intelligent accuse the Supreme Lord of being partial and claim that this is why one enjoys in this material world and another suffers. But this verse specifically says that there is no such partiality on part of the Supreme Lord. Living entities, however, are never independent. As soon as they declare their independence of the Supreme Controller, they are immediately put into this material world to try their luck freely, as far as possible. When the material world is created for such misguided living entities, they create their own karma, fruit of activities, and take advantage of the time element, and thereby they create their own fortune or misfortune. Everyone is created, everyone is maintained, and everyone is ultimately killed. As far as these three things are concerned, the Lord is equal to everyone. It is according to one's karma that one suffers and enjoys. The living entity's higher or lower position, his suffering and enjoying, are due to his own karma. The exact words used in this connection is anishaha, which means dependent on their own karma. The example is given that the government gives everyone the facilities for governmental action and management. But by one's own choice, one creates a situation which obliges him to exist under different types of consciousness. The example given in this verse is that when the wind blows, particles of dust float in the air, gradually lightning occurs, and then torrents of rain follow. And thus the rainy season creates a situation of varieties in the forest. God is very kind. He gives everyone an equal chance, but by the resultant actions of one's own karma, one suffers or enjoys this material world. Text 21. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is all-powerful, and he awards the results of one's fruit of activities. Thus, although one living entity's duration of life is very small, whereas that of another is very great. He is always in his transcendental position, and there is no question of lessening or increasing his duration of life. Purport. Both the mosquito and Lord Brahma are living entities in the material world. Both are minute sparks and are part of the Supreme Lord. The very short duration of life of the mosquito and the very long lifetime of Lord Brahma are both awarded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to the results of their karma. But in the Brahma Samhita we find it said, Karmani nirdahati. The Lord diminishes or vanquishes the reactions of devotees. The same fact is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Yagyart tat karmano nyantra. One should perform karma only for the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, one is bound by the action and reaction of karma. Under the laws of karma, a living entity wanders within the universe under the rule of eternal time, and sometimes he becomes a mosquito, and sometimes Lord Brahma. To a sane man, this business is not very fruitful. Bhagavad Gita 9.25 gives a warning to the living entities, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Those who are addicted to the worship of the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, and those who are addicted to the worship of the Pittas, forefathers, go to the Pittas. Those who are inclined to material activities remain in the material sphere. But persons who engage in devotional service reach the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where there is neither birth nor death, nor different varieties of life, under the influence of the law of karma. The best interest of the living entity is to engage himself in devotional service and go back home, back to Godhead. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur advises, quote, My friend, you are being washed away in material nature's waves of time. Please try to understand that you are the eternal servant of the Lord. Then everything will stop, and you will be eternally happy. I was listening to a lecture by Srila Prabhupada the other day, and a point stood out. Well, Prabhupada made the point stand out very much so, that education means to learn to stop trying to become, or stop trying to be God. Stop trying to be the enjoyer. Whatever God is, we should stop trying to be that. And if one understands that, then one should understand that they should surrender to God, and then do the opposite. So you've stopped being God. Now treat God as if He's God. Put God in the center of your life. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, if you can't liberate your dependence from the material world, then you shouldn't create dependency. You shouldn't become a leader or a parent or anything that people are looking up to you for dependency, because you cannot deliver them to this understanding that they should stop trying to be God, which means stop trying to be the enjoyer, stop trying to be the controller, stop trying to be the most beautiful, stop trying to be the most powerful, stop trying to be the one with the most wealth, stop trying to be the coolest, stop trying to be the most intelligent. Stop trying to be all those things and just try to serve and surrender to the one who is all those things. That is, will deliver someone from the material world. And this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur just said here. Please try to understand that you are the eternal servant of the Lord. Then everything will stop and you will be eternally happy. That is nice. So, text 22. Translation. The differentiation among varieties of life and their suffering and enjoyment is explained by some to be the result of karma. Others say it is due to nature, others due to time, others due to fate, and still others say that it is due to desire. Purport. There are different types of philosophers: Mimamsakas, atheists, astronomers, sexualists, and so many other classifications of mental speculators. The real conclusion is that it is our work only that binds us within this material world in different varieties of life. How these varieties have sprung up is explained in the Vedas. It is due to the desire of the living entity. The living entity is not a dead stone. He has different varieties of desire, or kama. The Vedas say, kamo karshit. The living entities are originally parts of the Lord, like sparks of a fire, but they have dropped to this material world, attracted by a desire to lord it over nature, to be God, to be the Lord. That is a fact. Every living entity is trying to lord it over the material resources to the best of his ability. This kama, or desire, cannot be annihilated. There are some philosophers who say that if one gives up his desires, he again becomes liberated. But that is not at all possible. But it is not at all possible to give up desire, for desire is a symptom of the living entity. It's a symptom of life. If there were no desire, then the living entity would be a dead stone. Srila Narottam Das Thakur therefore advises that one turn his desire towards serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then desires become purified. And when one's desires are purified, one becomes liberated from all material contamination. The conclusion is that the different philosophers' theories to explain the varieties of life and their pleasures and pain are all imperfect. The real explanation is that we are eternal servants of God, and that as soon as we forget this relationship, we are thrown into the material world, where we create our different activities and suffer or enjoy the result. We are drawn into this material world by desire, but the same desire must be purified and employed in the devotional service of the Lord. Then our disease of wandering in the universe under different forms and conditions will end. So yeah, take that desire and make it a desire to serve Krishna. Make it a desire to chant Hare Krishna. Like that. Text 23. Translation. The absolute truth, transcendence, is never subject to the understanding of imperfect sensory endeavor, nor is he subject to direct experience. He is the master of varieties of energies, like the full material energy, and no one can understand his plan or actions. Therefore, it should be concluded that although he is the original cause of all causes, no one can know him by mental speculation, but he can be known by devotional service. Yeah. Purport. The question may be raised, quote, since there are so many varieties of philosophers theorizing in different ways, which of them is correct? And we get this question all the time, right? When it comes to religion. Oh, every religion says they're right. Every religion says they have the truth, and what makes you different from everybody else? Well, the difference is we don't get our understanding through mental speculation or guessing. We get our understanding by doing devotional service. Krishna reveals himself. In the same way, that's where the knowledge is coming from. Srila Prabhupada has realization, and all the acharyas have realization. It's not mental speculation, it's experience. That's a huge difference. So anyway, the answer is that the absolute truth, transcendence, is never subject to direct experience or mental speculation. The mental speculator may be called Dr. Frog. The story is that a frog in a 3-foot well wanted to calculate the length and breadth of the Atlantic Ocean on the basis of his knowledge of his own well. But it was an impossible task for Dr. Frog. A person may be a great this is a weird word. A person may be a great academician, scholar, or professor, but he cannot speculate and expect to understand the absolute truth, for his senses are limited. The absolute truth is unlimited. The cause of all causes, the absolute truth, can be known from the absolute truth himself, and not by our our ascending process to reach him. When the sun is not visible at night, or when it is covered by a cloud in the day, it is not possible to uncover it, either by bodily or mental strength or by scientific instruments, although the sun is there in the sky. No one can say that he has discovered a torchlight so powerful that if one goes on the roof and focuses the torchlight in the night sky, the sun will then be seen. There is no such torchlight, nor is it possible. The word avyakta, unmanifested, in this verse indicates that the absolute truth cannot be manifested by any strain of so-called scientific advancement of knowledge. Transcendence is not a subject matter of direct experience. The absolute truth may be known in the same way as the sun, covered by a cloud or covered by night. For when the sun rises in the morning in its own way, then everyone can see the sun. Everyone can see the world. Everyone can see himself. This understanding of self-realization is called Atma Tattva. Unless, however, one comes to this point of understanding Atma Tattva, one remains in the darkness in which he was born. Under the circumstances, no one can understand the plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is equipped with varieties of energies as stated in Vedic literature. Parasha Shaktir Vivade Vatsuryate. He is equipped with the energy of eternal time. Not only does he have the material energy which we see and experience, but he has also many reserve energies that he can manifest in due course of time when necessary. The material scientist can simply study the partial understanding of the varieties of energies. He can take up one of the energies and try to understand it with limited knowledge, but still it is not possible to understand the absolute truth in full by dint of material science. No material science can foretell what is going to happen in the future. The Bhakti Yoga process, however, is completely different from so-called scientific advancement of knowledge. A devotee completely surrendered unto the Supreme Lord, who reveals himself by his causeless mercy. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, the Lord says, I give him intelligence. What is that intelligence? Yenamam Upayantite, the Lord gives one the intelligence to cross over the ocean of nescience and come back home back to Godhead. In conclusion, the cause of all causes, the absolute truth, or Supreme Brahman, cannot be understood by philosophical speculation, but he reveals himself to his devotee because the devotee fully surrenders unto his lotus feet. Bhagavad Gita is therefore to be accepted as the revealed scripture spoken by the Absolute Truth himself when he descended to this planet. If any intelligent man wants to know what God is, he should study this transcendental literature under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Then it is very easy to understand Krishna as he is. So I suppose one could argue here and say, well, Prabhupada says in this purport that you cannot understand Krishna by direct experience. But Krishna reveals himself, and then you have direct experience of Krishna. So I think it seems that would be a contradiction and kind of redundant to say it, but so there must be another meaning, which is basically by devotional service, you're not trying to directly contact Krishna. You're not reaching out with your own senses and your own abilities and trying to grasp Krishna and contact him and bring him to you and then study him objectively. You're worshipping, you're reading about Krishna, you're purifying your consciousness so Krishna's inspired to reveal himself to you. And in this way you get, for lack of a better word, direct experience. And I'm sure if I knew a Sanskrit word, that would make it clear. The Sanskrit word for the spiritual realization is called darshan, and the material word for direct experience is something else. So darshan is when you see the Lord, or rather the Lord sees you, and when that happens then you see everything, and by that sort of direct experience you understand everything. So our process isn't the material process of direct experience, it's a spiritual process in the sense that, again, you're not by your own endeavor trying to understand what is Krishna, but by Krishna revealing himself by following the process given by the spiritual master. Then you can understand Krishna. So it's not the same as direct experience in the material sense, where you work to understand things. Anyway, so I think that makes sense. Text 24. My dear son, those yakshas who are descendants of Kuvera are not actually the killers of your brother. The birth and death of every living entity are caused by the Supreme, who is certainly the cause of all causes. So his brother had some karma. His brother is within the material nature. Material nature was created in such a way to have birth and death. So therefore, ultimately, it's caused by the Supreme Lord. Because the Lord is the creator of this universe. We could also kind of sort of blame ourselves for our own death in the sense that we didn't have to take a birth in this material world. We could have taken our birth, or not taken birth and just stayed in the spiritual world. And that way we would have avoided the whole thing. So in that sense we could simply just blame ourselves as well. Otherwise, what's the need of the material world if no living entity comes to it? Well, living entities are always coming to the material world, so there's a need for it. It also gives us choice to choose the Supreme Soul, or not choose the Supreme Soul, which, makes free will matter. It gives free will relevance. Okay, text 25. The Supreme Personality of Godhead created this material world, maintains it, and annihilates it in due course of time. But because he is transcendental to such activities, he is never affected by ego in such action or by the modes of material nature. He's got no ego. Purport. In this verse, the word ahankara means without ego. The conditioned soul has a false ego, and as a result of his karma, he gets different types of bodies in this material world. Sometimes he gets the body of a demigod, and he thinks that body to be his identity. Similarly, when he gets the body of a dog, he identifies himself with that body. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no such distinction between the body and the soul. Bhagavad Gita therefore certifies that anyone who thinks of Krishna as an ordinary human being is without knowledge of his transcendental nature and is a great fool. The Lord says, Namam karmani limpanti. He is not affected by anything he does, because he is never contaminated by the material modes of nature. That we have a material body proves that we are infected by the three material modes of nature. The Lord says to Arjuna, you and I, quote, you and I had many, many births previously, but I remember everything, whereas you do not, unquote. That is the difference between the living entity or conditioned soul and the Supreme Soul. The Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body. And because he has no material body, he is not affected by any work he executes. There are many Mayavadi philosophers who consider that Krishna's body is the effect of a concentration of the material modes of goodness, but they distinguish Krishna's soul from Krishna's body. The real situation, however, is that the body of the conditioned soul, even if it has a large accumulation of material goodness, is material, whereas Krishna's body is never material, it is transcendental. Krishna has no false ego, for he does not identify himself with the false and temporary body. His body is always eternal. He transcends to this world. Not transcends. He descends to this world in his own original spiritual body. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Parambhavam. The words Parambhavam and Divyam are especially significant in understanding Krishna's personality. Divyam means divine. Original, bhavam, parambhavam. I was thinking about this earlier too. A while ago, one person was saying that they were disturbed about Krishna consciousness, and that Krishna consciousness was being a little toxic for them right now, so they were going to step away from it. And I was thinking, wow, which today that just means that you don't understand Krishna consciousness. Probably the reality is that one is so contaminated by material nature that when they come across something that is pure like Krishna consciousness, that they have a tendency to reject it. So the same instance is basically here, that people misunderstand Krishna, and they attribute material qualities to Krishna. They attribute material qualities to Krishna consciousness, and that's a mistake. Then people start to think Krishna has some kind of illusion, or he makes some kind of mistakes, or something like that. Okay, text 26. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supersoul of all living entities. He is the controller and maintainer of everyone. Through the agency of his external energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates everyone. Yikes. Purport. There are two kinds of energies in the matter of creation. The Lord creates this material world through his external material energy, whereas the spiritual world is a manifestation of his internal energy. He is always associated with the internal energy, but he is always aloof from the material energy. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 9.4, the Lord says, Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham tveshvavastitaha. Quote, all living entities are living on me, or on my energy, but I am not everywhere. Unquote. He is personally always situated in the spiritual world. In the material world also, whenever the Supreme Lord is personally present, whenever the Supreme Lord is personally present is to be understood as being the spiritual world. For example, the Lord is worshipped in the temple by pure devotees. The temple is therefore to be understood as being the spiritual world. So Krishna personally, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna in his full feature is the cowherd boy playing in Vrindavan, or Vishnu in the spiritual world. Krishna is spread everywhere in his impersonal energy, and he's located in the hearts of all the living entities as the super soul. But that is not Krishna. It's not everything that is God, which is Krishna. It's plenary portions and portions of plenary portions, kind of like that. So that when Krishna is saying that I'm not, everything is situated on his energy, but he's not everywhere, means that Krishna, as he originally is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna of Vrindavan, he's not situated everywhere. That aspect of God, the original aspect of God, only exists where there's this pure devotional service happening. So it's very special. Text 27. My dear boy Dhruva, please surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate goal of the progress of the world. Everyone, including the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, is working under his control, just as a bull, prompted by a rope in its nose, is controlled by its owner. Purport. The material disease is to declare dependence from the Supreme Controller. Factually, our material existence begins when we forget the Supreme Controller and wish to lord it over material nature. Everyone in the material world is trying his best to become the Supreme Controller, individually, nationally, socially, and in many other ways. Dhruva Maharaj was advised to stop fighting by his grandfather, who was concerned that Dhruva was adhering to a personal ambition to fight, to annihilate the whole race of Yakshas. In this verse, therefore, Swayambhuva Manu seeks to eradicate the last tinge of false ambition in Dhruva by explaining the position of the Supreme Controller. The words mrityum amritam, quote, death and immorality, unquote, are significant. Sorry, not immorality, immortality. So, mrityum amritam, death and immortality. mrityum, death, amrityum, not death, are significant. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, quote, I am ultimate death, who takes away everything from the demons, unquote. The demons' business is to continually struggle for existence as lords over material nature. The demons repeatedly meet death after death and create a network of involvement in the material world. The Lord is death for the demons, but for the devotees he is Amrita, eternal life. Devotees who render continuous service to the Lord have already attained immortality. For whatever they are doing in this life, they will continue to do it in the next. They will simply change their material bodies for spiritual bodies. Unlike the demons, they no longer have to change material bodies. The Lord, therefore, is simultaneously death and immortality. He is death for the demons and immortality for devotees. He is the ultimate goal of everyone because he is the cause of all causes. Dhruva Maharaj was advised to surrender unto him in all respects, without keeping any personal ambition. One may put forward the argument, quote, why are the demigods worshipped, unquote. The answer is given here that demigods are worshipped by less intelligent men. The demigods themselves accept sacrifice for the ultimate satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is a good argument if you ever get into an argument with an atheist, as I used to on the street. If they say, well, God doesn't exist, you can say, well, that's all right for you, but what is death? You don't want to die. All your plans will be ruined, and you won't be able to continue your life anymore. And I doubt you want to stop living, especially someone who's got good karma. They want to keep on living. So what is that thing that invariably controls you and everyone else in this world, without exception? Time, death. Try to stop it. No one can. It's impossible. It's all powerful. One of the qualities of God, being all powerful. So you can say, therefore, you can believe in God and make your life better by understanding how things are really going on. Or you can go on in ignorance and continue to pretend that God doesn't exist, even though there are all-powerful energies that are manipulating your life. Just like a bull with a ring in his nose is manipulated, is prompted. You are prompted to leave your wealth and your power and your money and your family behind by death. You're pulled by that rope attached to your body, which is fallible and will die. So that's a pretty good argument. I had a couple of kids on the street one time, and they were giving me a hard time for being a person of faith. And I said, well, okay, you think you're so smart, so God doesn't exist, then what controls you completely? And I gave them that whole argument about death, and they didn't know what to say. They were speechless. It worked pretty good. So you can try that on your belligerent atheist next time you come across one. Yeah, it works pretty good. So text 28. My dear Dhruva, at the age of only 5 years, you were very grievously afflicted by the words of your mother's co-wife, and you very boldly gave up the protection of your mother and went to the forest to engage in the yogic process for realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As a result of this, you have already achieved the topmost position in all the three worlds. Purport. Manu is very proud that Dhruva Maharaj was one of the descendants of his family because, at the age of only 5 years, Dhruva began meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Within 6 months he was able to see the Supreme Lord face to face. Factually, Dhruva Maharaj is the glory of the Manu dynasty, or the human family. The human beings begin from Manu. The Sanskrit word for man is Manushya, which means descendant of Manu. Not only is Dhruva Maharaj the glory of the family of Swayambhuva Manu, but he is the glory of the entire human society. Because Dhruva Maharaj had already surrendered to the Supreme Godhead, he was especially requested not to do anything unbefitting a surrendered soul. Text 29. My dear Dhruva, please therefore turn your attention to the Supreme Person, who is the infallible Brahman. Face the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your original position, and thus, by self-realization, you will find this material differentiation to be merely flickering. Purport. The living entities have three kinds of vision, according to their positions in self-realization. According to the bodily concept of life, one sees differentiation in terms of varieties of bodies. The living entity actually passes through many varieties of material forms, but despite all such changes of body, he is eternal. When the living entities, therefore, are viewed in the bodily concept of life, one appears to be different from another. Lord Manu wanted to change the vision of Dhruva Maharaj, who was looking upon the Yakshas as different from him, or as his enemies. Factually, no one is an enemy or friend. Everyone is passing through different types of bodies under the law of karma. But as soon as one is situated in his spiritual identity, he does not see differentiation in terms of this law. In other words, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahma bhuta prasanatma nasochati na kankshati samat sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. A devotee who is already liberated does not see differentiation in terms of the outward body. He sees all living entities as spirit souls, eternal servants of the Lord. Dhruva Maharaj was advised by Lord Manu to see with that vision. He was specifically advised to do so because he was a great devotee and should not have looked upon other living entities with ordinary vision. Indirectly, Manu pointed out to Dhruva Maharaj that out of material affection, Dhruva thought of his brother as his kin, and the Yakshas as his enemies. Such observation of differentiation subsides as one is situated in his original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. Yeah, so if that's true, that'll solve a lot of problems. That'll solve the race issues. It'll solve the this is for me and not for you mentality. It'll solve a lot of greedy problems. If this philosophy was promoted, for some reason, I guess just because atheists are against God, because if you believe that you're not the body or a soul, eventually you're going to believe that this material world is not the only place to live in, and then there's a higher realm, and if there's something higher, there's something controlling it, so it all kind of goes to that. But for some reason, people don't want to promote this idea that we're different than the body. Well, because they're demons, I guess that's why. They believe that they're a body, despite the evidence to the contrary. Okay, text number 30. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was already a liberated person because at the age of 5 years he had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even though liberated, he was, for the time being, afflicted by the illusion of Maya, thinking himself the brother of Uttama in the bodily concept of life. Wasn't that interesting that even though he was liberated, he could still be afflicted by the illusion of material nature for some time? Hence the the need to go back to the spiritual world where that won't happen at all. The whole material world is working on the basis of I and mine. This is the root of attraction to the material world. If one is attracted by this root of illusory conceptions, I and mine, he will have to remain within this material world in different exalted or nasty positions. By the grace of Lord Krishna, the sages, and Lord Manu reminded Dhruva Maharaj that he should not continue this material conception of I and mine. Simply by devotional service unto the Lord, his illusion could be eradicated without difficulty. Text 31. My dear king, just consider that what I have said to you, which will act as medicinal treatment upon disease. Control your anger, for anger is the foremost enemy on the path of spiritual realization. I wish all good fortune for you. Please follow my instructions. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was a liberated soul, and actually he was not angry with anyone. But because he was the ruler, it was his duty to become angry for some time in order to keep law and order in the state. His brother Uttama was without fault, yet he was killed by one of the yakshas. It was the duty of Dhruva Maharaj to kill the offender, life for life, because Dhruva was the king. When the challenge came, Dhruva Maharaj fought vehemently and punished the yakshas sufficiently. But anger is such that if one increases it, it increases unlimitedly. In order that Dhruva Maharaj's kingly anger not exceed the limit, Manu was kind enough to check his grandson. Dhruva Maharaj could understand the purpose of his grandfather, and he immediately stopped the fighting. The word Shrutena, Bhuyasa, by constantly hearing, are very important in this verse. By constantly hearing about devotional service, one can check the force of anger, which is detrimental to the process of devotional service. Srila Parikshit Maharaj said that the constant hearing of the pastimes of the Lord is the panacea for all material diseases. Everyone, therefore, should hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. By hearing, one can always remain in equilibrium, and thus his progress in spiritual life will not be hampered. Dhruva Maharaj's becoming angry with the miscreants was quite appropriate. There is a short story in this connection about a snake who became a devotee upon instruction by Narada, who instructed him not to bite anyone, or not to bite any more. Since ordinarily a snake's business is to fatally bite another living entity, as a devotee he was forbidden to do so. Unfortunately, people took advantage of this non-violence on the part of the snake, especially the children, who began to throw stones at him. He did not bite anyone, however, because it was the instruction of his spiritual master. After a while, when the snake met his spiritual master, Narada, he complained, "I have given up the bad habit of biting innocent living entities, but they are mistreating me by throwing stones at me." Unquote. Upon hearing this, Narada Muni instructed him, quote, "Don't bite, but do not forget to expand your hood as if you were going to bite. Then they will go away." Unquote. Narada Muni, so clever. Similarly, a devotee is always non-violent. He is qualified with all good characteristics. But in the common world, when there is mischief made by others, he should not forget to become angry, at least for the time being, in order to drive away the miscreants. That's interesting. A little anger every now and then for your own protection. In the animal kingdom, and in Krishna consciousness, we see this modern civilization as the animal kingdom. But in the animal kingdom, oftentimes before there's a fight, there's a show of like prowess, like I'm big, I'm scary, and you don't want to mess with me because I'm big and scary, and if it works, the other animal will just run away. So that's a better way of fighting. So sometimes that's necessary. It's rare, but sometimes it does so happen. I can think of an example. We were out on the street doing Harinam. We were just sitting and chanting, just, doing our own thing, just chanting. And one guy was kind of half drunk, I guess, and he came over and he was saying something and making fun of us, and he was kind of getting a little too close, and he was starting to touch us or touch our things, like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And so our leader, he got mad, and he just said, "Hey, leave us alone. We're not doing anything to you." And he got like really intense and mad just for that, like 3 seconds or something. And the guy was like, "Whoa!" It shocked him. He didn't expect that. And it kind of scared him, like, wow, this guy means business. And so he turned around and he walked away. Which is kind of a good example of that. Sometimes I've had people come over when we're doing Harinam, bug us, and I just say, "Hey, just get mad real quick," and kind of shocks people because we're so peaceful and happy, and then suddenly there's one person who's like really intense and angry. That makes people it gets their attention, and then they leave you alone. So it's kind of interesting. But then the contradiction comes. Next verse, verse 32. A person who desires liberation from this material world should not fall under the control of anger, because when bewildered by anger, one becomes a source of dread for all others. Well, again, the difference is not to become bewildered by anger, but a momentary use of it is sometimes necessary. At any rate, here's the purport. A devotee or saintly person should not be dreadful to others, nor should anyone be a source of dread to him. If one treats others with non-enmity, then no one will become his enemy, unless they're a total demon. There is the example, however, of Jesus Christ, who had enemies, and they crucified him. The demoniac are always present, and they find fault even with saintly persons. But a great saintly person never becomes angry, even if there is a very great provocation. So raising the hoods, it's not really getting angry, it's just feigning anger, and sometimes that's helpful. To protect devotees, diffuse a situation. And one who's expert and knows what will work can do such things. I don't know. Makes sense to me. Text number 33. Dear Dhruva, you thought that the Yakshas killed your brother, and therefore you have killed a great number of them. But by this action you have agitated the mind of Lord Shiva's brother Kuvera, who is the treasure of the demigods. Please note that your actions have been very disrespectful to Kuvera and Lord Shiva. Purport. Lord Manu stated that Dhruva Maharaj had been offensive to Lord Shiva and his brother Kuvera because the Yakshas belonged to Kuvera's family. They were not ordinary persons. As such, they had been described as Punya Janan, pious men. Somehow or other, the mind of Kuvera had been agitated, and Dhruva Maharaj was advised to pacify him. Text 34. For this reason, my son, you should immediately pacify Kuvera with gentle words and prayers, and thus his wrath may not affect our family. Purport. In our common dealings, we should maintain friendship with everyone, and certainly with such exalted demigods as Kuvera. Our behavior should be such that no one should become angry, and thereby commit a wrong to individuals, families, or societies. Text 35. Thus Swayambhuva Manu, after giving instructions to Dhruva Maharaj, his grandson, received respectful obeisances from him. Then Lord Manu and the great sages went back to their respective homes. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj to stop fighting. Jai. Swayambhuva Manu ki jai. So I'll stop reading there. And the next chapter is chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back home. It's a long chapter, which is great. Lots of reading there. So thanks for tuning in. At the beginning of the podcast, or the YouTube broadcast, I mentioned that we're going to do a discussion afterwards on a program called Discord. If you're interested in participating in that discussion, then you can send me a message on Facebook, and I can show you how to get on to our Discord. It's a pretty cool thing. So whoever's here, if you want to jump on Discord, if you have questions or if just some points you want to make, and we can talk about whatever happened, that'd be kind of neat to do. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.